Where we left off in episode 1, it was the end of 2015. I was still new to football, still figuring out where I fit. But something had started to shift. I wasn't just playing anymore. I was hungry, restless. I could feel that there was more out there for me in this game. More challenge, more responsibility, more possibility. Episode 2 begins in 2016, my 4th season with the Edmonton Storm. And what happens next is where everything changes. I wrapped up my 4th season with the Edmonton Storm in 2016. Defensive MVP, another trip to the WWCFL Championship game, and another loss. This one wasn't about numbers or depth. We lost because the Saskatchewan Valkyries were simply the better team. They were faster, more physical, more complete. As painful as that loss was, it was humbling in a different way. It showed me again how much higher the ceiling actually was, and how badly I wanted to keep climbing. After that season came Team Alberta. For the first time, I was wearing the same jersey as women I usually lined up against. The best players in the province coming together for one goal: to compete nationally. We went to nationals and won bronze, beating New Brunswick. And that game came with a milestone I didn't expect. My first and only concussion in football. Shout out to Olivia, who went on to represent Canada in both football and rugby. She is an absolute force. That Nationals tournament changed everything. I came out of it named Defensive MVP for Team Alberta and a Canadian All-Star, which meant I was officially invited to Team Canada tryouts. This wasn't local football anymore. This was national level competition. This got real. And the dream I'd spoken years earlier, representing Canada, was suddenly within reach. The Team Canada ID camp was in December of 2016. And the time between that camp and the roster being released was agonizing. Weeks of waiting, replaying reps in my head, wondering if I'd done enough. Then in January 2017, I got the email. I'd made the team. And for a moment, everything felt right. Then I scrolled down and saw my name listed as an offensive lineman. Even though they had pulled me halfway through the camp to practice with the O-line, saying, "We know you're an amazing linebacker, let's see what else you can do," this realization still had me shook. They would never roster me on a national team and put me in a position I had never played before. Would they? Up until that point, I had only ever played linebacker, a defensive position built on instincts, reading plays, and attacking the ball. Offensive line was the complete opposite. Technical, reactive, quiet work in the trenches. When I inquired about it, the coaches told me it was just a roster thing, that I'd be playing linebacker. So I trusted it. I trusted them, even though something about it didn't quite sit right. Still, the dream was real, and that belief in myself, that confidence, came back stronger than it ever had in basketball. I was willing to do whatever it took to stay there. The World Championships were held in Langley, British Columbia, a place that would later become central in my career. I arrived at training camp excited. Nervous, but ready. I picked up my gear, which felt like a good sign, and then I was told the coaches wanted to meet with me. That's when they told me plainly. I was playing offensive line. Not linebacker, not defense, offensive line. A position I had never played in my life. I had spent the entire first half of the year learning the defensive playbook. And suddenly, none of that mattered. Instead, I was handed an offensive playbook that was a novel in comparison and was told to get to work. I spent many nights crying in my room. I felt overwhelmed, unprepared, out of place. But I showed up. Every rep, every meeting, every practice. I learned by doing, by failing, by asking questions, by refusing to disappear. I also earned reps on special teams, something offensive linemen rarely get to do. I also started some heated discussion between coaches on that topic as well. We went on to win silver against Team USA. That experience pushed me further than I thought I could go, and it expanded what I believed I was capable of, not just as a player, but as a learner inside the game. Rewinding back to the start of 2016 is when I actually got my start in coaching. Although I was still figuring myself out as a player, I chose to step into my first coaching role. I joined the staff at St. Francis Xavier High School in Edmonton, working with the linebackers and eventually the offensive and defensive line. I would stay there until 2020. At the time, I didn't fully understand why I felt so drawn to coaching. I wasn't waiting for credentials, I wasn't waiting for permission. I just knew I wanted to understand the game more deeply, from the inside out. What surprised me was how natural it felt. Coming from a background as a personal trainer, I could teach. I could break things down. I could adjust how I explain things depending on who was in front of me. I could lead. At first, you could feel the uncertainty. Some of the boys didn't understand why I was there. Some of the coaches weren't sure what to make of me either. But over time, as they learned my background, saw how seriously I took the work, and watched the players respond, that uncertainty started to shift. Respect didn't come from a title. It came from preparation, consistency, showing up every day, and helping players get better. Without realizing it, I had already started becoming more than just an athlete. At the start of 2018, I was invited to attend the NFL Women's Career Forum. For the first time, I was surrounded by women who believed professional football could include us, not as a novelty, but as contributors. That year, the CFL participated as well. The 4 Canadian women at the forum spent time with Randy Ambrosie and other CFL representatives, segregated from all the NFL action. At the time, I wasn't impressed. I had my sights set on the NFL. I didn't want to be redirected back towards the Canadian game. I wanted bigger. The real turning point came afterward, in a one-on-one meeting with a former Edmonton Elks general manager. It was one of the most degrading and humiliating conversations of my football career. He spoke to me like I was delusional. He explained the sport to me as if I hadn't spent years playing it, studying it, and now coaching it. He told me football wasn't suited for me, that it meant long hours, time away from family, and that I wouldn't be able to handle it. I walked out of that conversation carrying a lot of anger. For a long time, that anger was aimed directly at the CFL. But with distance, I realized something important. That moment didn't shut a door. It clarified my purpose. My work wasn't in the US. It wasn't in the NFL. It was here, in Canadian football, in building something better than what I had just experienced. That conversation lit a fire in me, one that would shape the next decade of my life. Following the career forum, everything in my football life started expanding at once. I played my 6th season with the Edmonton Storm, my first full season on the offensive line, and my first season playing on both sides of the ball. A position that once completely overwhelmed me was now familiar, and by the end of the season, I was awarded Offensive Lineman of the Year. Not because I was the biggest, not because I was the strongest, but because I had learned how to think the game from the inside out. Parallel to playing, I was coaching. That summer, I coached a U16 female flag football team at regionals, where we took home silver. Moving back and forth between playing and coaching accelerated my understanding of football in a way nothing else could. What I learned as a player made me a better coach. What I saw as a coach made me a smarter player. I was evolving everywhere, as an athlete, as a coach, as a leader, and most importantly, as a thinker. And without realizing it yet, I was also starting to see the gaps, where opportunity existed and where it didn't. At that very flag football tournament came the moment. A coach from Manitoba said something to me almost in passing. He said, "Now you just need a tackle league and a team, and we can do this for tackle." It wasn't a pitch, it wasn't a challenge, It was a statement, and it landed. Because for the first time, I could see it clearly. The athletes were there, the interest was there, the pathway was not. Instead of asking if it was possible, I started asking how. I went straight to Football Alberta and asked what it would take. They connected me with the CDMFA, the Capital District Minor Football Association, who runs youth football programming in Edmonton and the surrounding areas. And just like that, something new began forming. Not for me, but for the girls who were going to come after me. Girls who deserved a tackle football pathway without having to fight for its existence. By the end of 2018, I wasn't the same person you met in episode 1. I was a provincial athlete, a national team member. I was a coach trusted in rooms I hadn't been invited into before. I had learned how to adapt, how to absorb information quickly, how to lead without waiting for permission. Somewhere along the way, people started looking to me for direction, not just performance. I could see the gaps now. I understood the systems. I knew how much work still needed to be done. I had the skills, the vision, the momentum. And it was time to create something bigger than myself. Because this wasn't just my journey anymore. This was about opportunity, about access, about building a future that didn't require girls to fight for a place in the game. And this is where girls tackle football in Alberta gets its first heartbeat. In episode 3, we begin that creation.